What if I told you that the best decision of my life was moving 20 miles south of San Francisco? Today, I'm gonna share with you my personal story about trading city life for life in the suburbs, and a couple funny stories. One about what I said to my now wife before we moved down here. And to see what it's like living in San Mateo County, join me every Monday at 5 p.m. for my latest videos. So let's dive in. So I loved living in the city before I moved down to Burlingame. It was super fun. I lived actually in the city for 8 years in my 20s. And first I lived in North Beach, had a bachelor pad, little 1-bedroom, like a block away from Cafe Trieste, and it was a blast. Even had like 1-car tandem parking. I was just grateful to have a little spot for my little Honda Accord. So I spent 4 years living there, and then I met my now wife, and we ended up living together in Noe Valley in Liberty Hill, basically at 21st and Dolores, so a block or two from Dolores Park. I loved it. We're huge foodies. My sister's a professional foodie, so San Francisco is just a world-class place to live. But some things kind of irked me a little bit too. Sometimes we'd drive back from working on the peninsula in the Burlingame area. We didn't have parking, so sometimes it would take me 5 to 15 minutes just to find a parking spot within 3 or 4 blocks of our apartment. I'm like, this is stressful. I didn't really like that. You know, we kind of dreamed of having a home with the garage where we could just, like, my wife had this dream of be able to park in a garage with a little tennis ball that comes down, and then just driving up and hitting the tennis ball and getting out of the car. And I just love the energy being in San Francisco, being able to walk or take Muni to a Giants game, go to some of my favorite places like in North Beach. I just love going out to eat in the city. I love meeting friends. I just love going to Dolores Park or going out to the Ferry Building or Christie Field. My cousins live in San Francisco, so it's just a great place to be. But eventually, I need something different. I want to see the sun all the time. And yes, there's pockets of the city where you can get the sun in Noe Valley, of course, and other parts. But I was like, I want the sun. I was like, I want some good weather. I just want to be able to park everywhere. And it's just kind of bothering me. In a little bit, I'm going to tell you guys this crazy story about the police response time between what I hear in San Francisco and between what we experienced in Burlingame when something was actually stolen from our house. But overall, I just was ready to move out of the city. I'd heard really good things about many different schools down here. And obviously, because I work down here professionally, I just had a little bit more insight than most. And then of course, the peninsula, which is kind of always where I had my heart set, was moving down here. So as kind of life evolved, so did our priorities about what we wanted for where we want to live. But before I get into a couple other things about why we moved to Burlingame specifically, let me back up. So when I was 16 years old, I worked on my Eagle Scout project. I was in Troop 28 in Burlingame. Scouts was an amazing gift that was given to me to be able to participate and go off to scout camp and horseback riding. And my parents sent me to Catalina Island to go to scout camp down there. And I went sailing once on Lake Michigan, which was a blast. And I really had a wonderful experience. And so for my Eagle Scout project, I had read about this old theater that had been torn down. They actually literally used a wrecking ball. This is on California Drive. It was called the Fox Theater. And it just kind of got me wondering, well, do we have any protections for historic properties in Burlingame? So I ended up doing a survey of historic homes in Burlingame. And I highlighted 24 or so different homes and structures that I thought were kind of architecturally significant. So I did some research about it. It was a really fun project. And so I ended up putting together a booklet that was spiral bound and a nice community effort. And I ended up presenting my Eagle Scout project to the City Hall with the hopes of kind of stimulating interest in preserving old structures, which is something that I kind of cared about. So fast forward to a few years later, we buy our first house in Burlingame. And within a week of moving in, we got some persimmons that are dropped off on our front porch. And like, oh, that's so thoughtful. Actually, I love persimmons. And so it turns out that they were dropped off by our neighbor across the street, Martha Rosman May, who had actually been my kind of advisor from the Burlingame Historical Society on my Eagle Scout project. Like, what a stroke of luck that our neighbor could be the exact person who I'd worked with about 15 years earlier. So the only coincidences like that can happen here in Burlingame. So I was like, hey, after 3 or 4 months of dating, I was like, this could be serious. I said, well, are you open to living in Burlingame for the rest of your life? I just kind of want to deal it out. I mean, I know it's not something everyone asks their significant other after only a few months, but it was something that was important to me. And then her response is, well, there could be worse places. And kind of the rest is history. We are so grateful for the life that we've built here in Burlingame. The community has given us so much, and we try to give back, of course, however we can. So for our home buying experience, I'd say it's probably a little bit more unconventional than most. We really wanted to be in Burlingame, but our budget was so low That's all we could afford. You know, we worked really hard, like many of you. You know, we could have afforded to buy a 3-bedroom in San Mateo, but we really wanted to buy a home in Burlingame, and all we could afford at the time was a 2-bedroom house. So that's what we did. We said, let's find like the oldest house that's not that good condition, but in a really, really good location. And so we ended up writing an offer on the home in Burlingame. The offer was not accepted. So then I kind of got totally dejected, and then we ended up writing an offer actually on a home in the San Mateo Village neighborhood, which is one of my favorite neighborhoods on the peninsula. And there were 20-something offers on it. We got outbid. I think we came in number 2. And then something else popped up in Burlingame, and it was a 2-bedroom. It was a few blocks away from where I grew up, and we just totally fell in love with it. The house had pink tile in the bathrooms, brown countertops in the kitchen. We could barely afford this house as a housewarming present. My mom and dad actually bought us a dishwasher. So we basically just slid in there, and I'm just sharing this because we all start somewhere. And we lived in that house for 7 years before we kind of did a project. We would do a few things here and there. So we spent $20,000 here, $10,000 here, a little bit here and there. And so in addition to having an older house, other things we were super pumped about was be able to have a home with a yard. Like, we wanted to have a garden, and I definitely don't have a green thumb, but I love growing tomatoes when we can and when the weather's really good. So be able to do that. This is a little bit harder to do in the city. Like, most of the lot sizes in Burlingame are 5,000 to 6,000 square feet, at least in the flatter areas. And we really valued the walkability that we had kind of in the Noe Valley area. And so we wanted to kind of replicate that down in Burlingame. I mean, you're just gonna have to come down here and experience it if you haven't been down. Just take the Caltrain or drive and spend some time. I mean, we are shooting this on a weekend at the end of the summer. I mean, I guess I feel I'm on a movie set because there's so many people. It's so full of life. There's multiple parties happening. There's tons of kids at the playground. I'm literally like a 2-minute walk to downtown Burlingame. And so it's kind of the best of everything. I think there's a baseball practice or soccer practice happening on the other side here. We have all the tennis courts here that are totally full. So you kind of think about the best of San Francisco, and then you put it in such a compact area down here. So you get all the walkability. And that was something that we really valued being in the city, was being able to walk everywhere. And so living in Burlingame, we just can kind of walk everywhere. Now, sure, you could live up in the Mills Estates neighborhood or Burlingame Hills, which are a little bit farther away, but you're still only a 6 or 7 minute drive. Check out some of my other videos though, if you want to learn about each neighborhood in Burlingame. But at least from my perspective, kind of moving down here, I did tell you earlier that we once had an Amazon package stolen from our front steps. I called up the Burlingame police, and within 10 minutes, there was a sergeant in our living room. Now, imagine that in San Francisco, right? Like, that's never happening. And so Burlingame, they actually take that stuff seriously. And then about 2 days later, I get a text from our neighbor saying the footage of your package theft was on KPIX TV. Like, this is crazy. And then someone ended up calling in an anonymous tip, and they found the person who had stolen the package from our front steps. And long story, but that's kind of the nice thing about being in a place like Burlingame is the police really care, the community cares, the city leadership is fantastic. It's just a great place to be. I also just love that in Burlingame, it is so much quieter than San Francisco. I mean, I remember being in our 1-bedroom, which was fairly new, and then you could hear people honking their cars and revving their motorcycles, and I don't know, it just wasn't super relaxing for me. So I love being in our house now, and just being so sensitive to noise. When we were kind of doing a major rebuild of our current house, we ended up putting, well, I really wanted to put a microphone in the backyard. We had an acoustic engineering firm come out, put a mic in our backyard for 24 hours because I really wanted to design our house in a way that was super quiet. Now, it's already quiet in Burlingame, but I was like, I'm only gonna do this once. Let's just get it super quiet. The other thing is the weather down here. It is so nice. Of course, basically going from San Francisco all the way down to, like, you kind of go, we have some different microclimates, of course. So if you go San Francisco all the way down to like South San Francisco and Millbrae, it gets a little more foggy up there, but then Burlingame is just this perfect Mediterranean mix. Now, you could go down to Palo Alto, of course, and San Jose, and it's just a lot hotter. Some people love that, but I just love in Burlingame how it's very temperate and mild year round. Pretty much, I mean, not wearing my Patagucci stuff that often, basically, right? I like to wear my Patagonia Nano Puff often, but other than that, you really don't need much more than that. Now, Burlingame is also super kid friendly. Of course, San Francisco is fantastic. You know, my sister lives in San Francisco, raising a family there, and I hear all the good stories about how awesome that is. But maybe I'm a little biased, but I hear all the time from people just through my work or just, when we're meeting other families. The quality of life here with kids is super high. There are so many sports and activities. I remember when our son was really young, there were so many activities, and my wife ended up joining a other moms group through the Burlingame Parents Club. And she ended up making so many friends that way, and there'd be a lot of play dates at the park, get-togethers. I remember when our son was born, someone came by who became very close friends of ours actually, and they dropped off a pasta dinner when our son was 4 or 5 days old. So that's the kind of thing that you get in the Burlingame community that I just don't think is very common as much in San Francisco. Additionally, as our son has kind of gotten older and all the different sports and activities we have, there's so many different ways that you can be creative here in Burlingame depending on what your interests are. I've been able to coach soccer a few different seasons, and when he was younger, I was into baseball and coaching. Not necessarily very knowledgeable about all the sports, but I ended up having a good time, and that's the nice thing about Burlingame. Everyone can participate however they wish. I also really love how Burlingame has 2 downtowns in such a small piece of geography. So we have downtown Burlingame, which is where Burlingame Avenue is. And then we also have Broadway, which is the northern part of Burlingame. And then there's also Burlingame Plaza. When we moved down to Burlingame, I had this big fear. Well, not really a big fear, maybe, but I was like, oh, well, it's nice here and it's quieter at night and all that, but we're always gonna go back to San Francisco for date night. Well, it turns out that as Burlingame has developed, we've been able to attract some really amazing restaurants from San Francisco. The food scene here in Burlingame and just within a few miles between downtown San Mateo, San Carlos, Millbrae, Redwood City, there's so much fantastic food here that it is very rare that we go up to San Francisco for a date night. And sometimes I'm like, oh, San Francisco, like I'm like complaining in my head as if it's that far away, and it's really not. It could be 25, 30 minutes, like it's not a big deal. But sometimes I tell these stories in my head because we have so many good options here. And that's something that I was a little surprised about. Before we moved to Burlingame, coming out of the city, like I had this phobia of like, oh, Burlingame is really nice and awesome, but like, I don't know about the food scene. I was totally wrong. It's like, well, where should we go? There's so many good options. So if you're into the outdoors, like I am, of course in San Francisco, you've got Golden Gate Park and there's a lot of different parks there. But in Burlingame, we actually have 19 parks in 12 neighborhoods. So kind of where I've been poking around now, we're in Washington Park. This is our biggest park downtown. We have some other pretty big parks in Burlingame too, where there's play structures, basketball courts, tennis courts. It's actually pretty impressive when you think about it for a town of 30,000 people. The other thing that's really impressive here, many people say, oh, well, it's so beautiful everywhere. There's a couple of reasons for that. Burlingame has been actually a Tree City USA for over 30 straight years. And that just means that the city commits a percentage of its overall revenue to maintaining an urban kind of tree infrastructure. And in Burlingame, that's why you kind of see all these beautiful trees here that are visited at least once every 5 years by a member of the Burlingame Parks and Rec Department for safety. And if you're thinking about moving down here, you can just go see all the different neighborhoods, go see all 12 neighborhoods. You'll see all have lots of trees. Some will have massive tree density, some will just be really good, but it's all a matter kind of between like good and great. So if you're thinking about maybe making a move down to Burlingame from San Francisco or anywhere in the peninsula, I'd love to talk to you. All my contact info is below in the description. Another thing that I really love about Burlingame is our library system. You might not know this, but Burlingame actually has been ranked the #2 library system in the state of California for towns under 40,000 people. #1 is Beverly Hills. So if you're into the library, here it's not just about like going to check out books, but there's a lot of different programs there. The Burlingame Library Foundation is actually on the board there for a few years. There's a ton of really quality programming they do and bringing in guest speakers and some really notable ones actually. They host a trivia night, which is super fun. So we love the community here in Burlingame. We have 2 big sources of tax revenue that many people aren't aware of. So pre-COVID, all of the SFO hotels, so all the hotels at San Francisco Airport are actually in the city of Burlingame. And pre-COVID, that would throw off occupancy tax of about $25 to $30 million a year, which is an insane amount of money for a town of 30,000 people. And I was just reading about a month ago that passenger traffic at SFO, this is right before July 4th, was about 92% of pre-COVID levels. So it's getting pretty high. And the other big source of tax revenue is Burlingame Auto Row, which generates between $5 and $7 million a year. So for such a small town to have tens of millions of dollars a year coming into the general fund. It's pretty impressive. I remember during COVID, the city actually didn't even lay off any workers to my knowledge. So I would like to think that we're pretty innovative here and how we use the funds. There's always money being spent that you kind of walk around and you can see parks being redone, streets being paved. If a tree falls down, there's usually someone there within an hour. There's usually a meter maid vehicle from the police department directing traffic. And these are things that when I lived in San Francisco, I just didn't see. So the support that we have within the community and from our local government is pretty impressive. And I think that's why, from a real estate perspective, you see very few homes come on the market here, because you don't see people say, well, I'm gonna move to Burlingame and then someday I really hope to move from Burlingame to X other place. That's not really like a common path. People just kind of move here and they live here for their whole lives. And my mom and dad live here, and I've not heard them say, well, I'm gonna move here, I'm gonna move there. No, like they're pretty happy here. Of course, they have grandkids and all that, but I think that's a really common thing to see why people move from San Francisco specifically down to Burlingame. Now, kind of thinking about my parents, it's worth sharing that Burlingame has really awesome multi-generational appeal. So it's great for raising a family and having little kids. It's great if you're a senior. My in-laws actually live very close by, and they go to the bocce ball court all the time. They like to go out to eat. They can walk everywhere, walk out to Coyote Point. My parents walk all the time to the farmer's market on Burlingame Avenue. That's kind of a nice thing. You can grow old in Burlingame if you want to. We have a brand new community center on Burlingame Avenue. It was a $52 million structure that was completed about 2 years ago. Yes, there was an older one there. Like I went to summer camp there growing up a few times, but it's state of the art. There's a senior center and senior room. There's a teen lounge. So Burlingame has been really thoughtful in having programming and support for people of all ages, and that's something I'm very proud about. So is Burlingame really perfect? Well, I don't know if anything's perfect, but is it the perfect place for me and for many people who live here? I think they would say yes. Are there flaws? Are there things that are nits? Yes, but just kind of walking around between yesterday and today, there within our neighborhood, Burlingame Gables, there are 3 different blocks that were having block parties where there were signs that said road closed. So you could actually reach out to the PD and say you want to have a block party, and they'll block it off for you. That's so cool. I never experienced anything like that in San Francisco. And when they do block off areas, there's tons of people, just totally crazy town. So I feel very grateful to live here. And if you're thinking about making a move, I'd love the honor of being able to chat with you about Burlingame. Sure, maybe I'm a little bit biased, but it's a pretty good place. And if Burlingame's not the right fit for you, I'd love to be able to help you figure out which other towns in the peninsula might be an option. So all my contact info is below. You can send me an email, give me a call, and I look forward to seeing you guys on the next video.